Good afternoon, everyone. We're into the afternoon session here, so rule number one is our job is to share information with you that keeps you awake and engaged. So we have an interesting topic here, conquering barriers to widespread energy storage implementation. The good news is there are plenty of barriers. I think I encourage you to think about, create a list in your own mind of all the barriers, and together we'll go through what we see are the key barriers and what is the path forward in determining which ones to attack first. Where is progress being made? Where are we still struggling? And why is it worth it anyway to knock our heads against these walls? So to begin, I'm going to start with Shellka Arora of NYSERDA. I'm going to go ahead and let Harris introduce himself. And when you do, Harris, if you could just say something, an interesting fact about yourself that people might not know about, that would be great. Come on, sure.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here today. I'm Schaer. I'm a senior project manager with NYSERDA. I work out of NYSERDA's New York City office and have been involved with our existing facilities program, which dealt with commercial and industrial capital improvement projects. And that's kind of morphed in as we built our partnership with Edison and started to tackle the incoming demand management issues associated with the downstate region into what's now the demand management program. As far as interesting facts that pertain to me and storage, specifically, I guess actually one of the things that got me pretty interested in storage, as a tool for managing load, is that I have a major affection for tall ship sailing, and so one of the things that I've noticed that have actually been implemented in a number of tall ships, because you are at times sailing under wind and at times motoring if there isn't any wind, but you're always trying to reduce the amount of fuel because almost none of them actually make any sort of profit or anything like that. So limiting your expenses is really important. So notice that actually there's a significant number of tall ships out there that utilize some sort of battery-based storage to manage and to actually capture some of the electricity that's created by their generators and use it during times so that when they're sailing or at night, they don't actually have to use it as fuel. So I think it's, there's a lot of things that in the building industry have come over from the maritime industry, usually more so on kind of more motor, large ships and vessels of that type. But I always thought there was kind of an interesting parallel to what we're trying to do in the building industry, that there's at least wooden hull loads from the late 1800s that have storage, arrays in them for batteries and things like that. So you might just pass me the clicker. So I hope that constitutes some sort of storage-related vignette. There you go. So what I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about today is what's called our demand management programs. This is the joint program I kind of alluded to that Edison and NYSERDA have on the street today. So it's active today. Applications can be submitted, and we can get started with whatever project. And kind of this program is. I'm going to go into more details about what incentives it offers and how they're particularly relevant to the storage aspect of things. But it's responding to the barrier that in a lot of cases, up until now, for many building owners, the economics didn't really work out, and incentives were sometimes hard to find, or they weren't really as actively on the street. And I would like to at least point out that prior to this program, we had some deployment incentives for battery and thermal storage, but as a result of this new initiative, they've gone up about 4 or 5 times. I would also keep in mind that both Edison and NYSERDA do run a number of different R&D type initiatives that are usually competitive in nature for storage for storage projects too. Oftentimes, if you're integrating it in some very demonstrative or unusual way, integrating it with solar, integrating with battery for vehicle chargers, that type of thing. So, while I can talk about this, don't forget about those. So, This program, the way that we've designed it is the intent is for it to build upon the existing program, so people really don't have to relearn the wheel and have to figure out how to get the projects through our process. So we've taken what was the Edison custom program and the NYSERDA existing facilities performance program, and have essentially layered an adder incentive on top of it that specifically targets demand reduction, because we have some pending potentially capacity availability issues when 2016 rolls around that we're trying to plan for if that actually occurs or not. But what we've been able to determine in our discussions with the Public Service Commission is that the net benefits of this program are worthwhile and important to pursue, even if those capacity issues don't materialize. So some of the targets here is that we're looking, what's listed here are kind of the targets as far as the customer sectors that we're looking at. It's primarily on the commercial industrial side, since that's really where the peak coincident load as far as the system comes from. And you're looking for some large-scale projects that really can maximize economies of scale and get 500 kW, 1 megawatt, 2 megawatt demand reductions achieved through this initiative. And also customers that are willing to kind of expand some of their existing initiatives to really target the summertime peak demand reduction. And another major part of it is there's a non-electric cooling or fuel switching, non-electric AC component. So customers who are on the steam grid or who are doing self-generated cooling certainly come to us if they're looking to renew their equipment. And just as kind of I mentioned before, there is a deadline for this. We need to have this demand reduction achieved, which is a 100 megawatt goal in Edison territory. So that 100 megawatts needs to be installed and operational by summer of 2016. And just a little bit about the definition of the peak demand period. This is basically defined as 2 to 6 p.m. summer weekday non-holidays. That's where we're trying to achieve that 100 megawatts. All the projects that we're doing need to correspond and achieve load reduction during that time. So I'm talking about storage, but I'm also talking about all of the lighting and cooling, HVAC, and EMS upgrade type projects that are going to be achieved through this program as well. We've already received a number of applications and are working on putting them through the system and allowing customers to install the projects. So there's a slight kind of one thing to keep in mind is that there are heightened incentives here for demand response or callable demand reductions, and whereas what I was referring to before are demand reduction that is happening every single day between that June 1st to September 30th deadline. So these are some things, if you're familiar with our existing programs in the Edison or NYSERDA side, shouldn't probably be too much of a surprise. We want you to set the projects before you actually start taking equipment out and installing things so that we can really get a good understanding of the baseline and utilize that information to ensuring that the upgrade that you're doing is actually reducing the load as planned. This program is driven actually by the monthly adjustment clause rather than the system's benefit charge. It's pretty much going to be on your bill unless you're a pure NYSERDA customer. If you're not sure, just reach out to any of us. I saw there's some other NYSERDA folks here on my team, but also some Con Ed folks here who can help you out with that. We have kind of a threshold project size, 50 kW, so we just want to make sure that projects are of a decent size as we do this kind of verification. But one thing to keep in mind is that we'll allow aggregation of multiple sites to reach up to that level. And we'll pay up to 50% of the project cost for the incentive can be used to pay up to 50% of the project cost. And we do have some bonus incentives if you have particularly large projects that can help get above that. But here's just kind of a taste of the array of different incentives and how they've changed from how they were structured before. For the most part, what was on the street was an energy efficiency based offer at 16 cents per kilowatt hour. And so in all these different categories we've added, in addition to that, these demand reduction incentives. So the ones kind of zeroing out on the thermal storage and battery storage side is we've gone up from $600 per kW to now $2,600 per kW for thermal storage, and gone up to $2,100 for battery storage. And slide is both on Con Ed and NYSERDA's website, so you can kind of see if you're not able to catch all this right now. A little bit briefly about the technical requirements. I'm going to go through these pretty quickly because I want to get more toward the storage side, but really shouldn't surprise anyone here. We have efficiency requirements. So, you know, if you're just putting in code equipment, you're not going to be able to get incentives from us. So you need to make sure that you're going above and beyond essentially the equipment call of duty to get some extra money from us. So it's usually based off of ASHRAE for HVAC and that type of equipment, and Energy Star and DLC for that as well, but also for lighting. And you know, and then one thing just keep in mind with process efficiency or data center projects is that we'll look at those as well. So don't think that those aren't part of the mix here. Just certainly reach out to us. We can kind of talk through how we can make sure that you're getting we're looking at your project in the right way as far as its load reduction. On the storage side, we are looking at storage projects as referring back to that 2 to 6 p.m. Peak period. So that's when the storage needs to be consistently providing load reduction during that time. This is for either thermal storage or battery storage. So the kind of thing to remember as far as thermal storage goes is that in addition to the actual heat reduction achieved by the ton hours stored in ice tanks or water tanks, we'll also be looking at what the peak reduction is associated with new chillers, upgrades to ventilation and pumping system. So we'll come up with some aggregate number for that and then apply the incentive to that value. On the battery storage side, just as I kind of mentioned, just to reiterate that we're looking for steady, consistent demand discharge during the 2 to 6 p.m. period. And just a little bit about kind of the round trip efficiency criteria is that if there is additional systems to cool the battery array or anything like that, we're not going to calculate that into the round trip efficiency. It's basically the round trip AC current that's gone in versus what's come out, and there needs to be a minimum round trip efficiency of 70%. And so the actual discharge is, just to go back to that, is not so much the nominal, but the actual what we're able to meter and monitor based upon the performance period of the project. So that kind of, this is a little more in the application process. This is posted on our website, and if there's any questions, you can come reach out to me. But it's basically submit your scope of work and some information about your project, give us an idea when you're going to do it. A little bit on how the actual project process works is that we have a pre-installation site visit. We give you kind of the go-ahead that we've reserved some money for your project. Please go ahead and install. And then after that, you just let us know to come back in, and we do a post-installation site visit. And the incentive payment, similar to the way things have been done in the past for larger projects, is that we'll provide an installation payment of 60%. And then once we've been able to monitor the performance and the demand reduction of the project, we'll provide that measurement verification payment of 40% once we're able to see that data. This is going to be done in every project, which is a bit of a departure from how things have been done previously. And that's just based upon the critical nature of our knowledge of the demand reduction ahead of the summer 2016 deadline. And our technical reviewers will be shouldering a lot more of that burden, as that's something that we understand the market hadn't necessarily expected. So you can rely on us to help do some of that metering and monitoring of the energy savings. And this is just what we're referencing. We typically base this off of IPMVP, the retrofit isolation type approaches. And so this is really kind of the end, but as far as where you get some more information about the program, both visiting our website or emailing us, I imagine that this presentation is going to be available on the website. But you can certainly just type into Google demand management program, and both Con Edison and NYSERDA's links will come up. So thanks so much. Looking forward to the conversation.
What I was hoping to do is put this up on that project table where we show the different incentives. I think it'd be be a great thing out as a backdrop as we talk or something like that. So we're going to move forward. Mark Matthews is going to talk. He's a senior vice president of EaglePicher for sales and marketing, formerly president of Arista Power. And then from there, we're going to talk with Shellka Arora from Chadbourne and Parke. The way we lined up the panel for today, unfortunately, Anthony Barna from China can't join us. But we did want to give you a sense of the incentives. And I think the reason why I wanted to go back to this slide is these incentives are coming out of the need. When you look at barriers to storage, one of the first questions to ask yourself is, are we dealing with a need or a nice to have? And that's a significant barrier if we're talking nice to haves in terms of getting things done. So I think we're in a transition right now. We're going from a nice to have to a need to have. And these incentives here are reflective of the greater and greater need that storage needs to be part of the equation of the conversation. So for those that don't know me, just by 2 letters, my name is Chissell. I'm Senior Vice President at Viridity Energy, and I have the opportunity to work a lot in New York City with Edison Solutions as our strategic partner. And I've had an opportunity to work with Mark Matthews, who's at Arista, and we're now at EaglePicher, on monetizing these energy assets behind the meter so that they derive the full financial value for the developer, the owner, the technology partner, etc. So that's the space we're playing in right now. And I think just before I send Mark up to talk, one of the points I wanted to mention with this slide here in regards to storage, now that there's an incentive, you've come to a point where you need to determine your strategy for approaching it. You can go for the permanent demand reduction strategy, where you go for the $2,100 if you're a battery storage play, or the $2,600 is thermal storage. But then keep in mind that we've got a requirement from Monday through Friday, 2 to 6, throughout the summer, to provide that reduction. So you have to calculate the cost, the cost on the battery to provide that throughout the entire summer during those time frames. And this is not just for one summer. The expectation is that you're going to do this summer over summer over summer, ideally for 10 years is the goal here. So that's certainly one approach that you look at in terms of what technology do you have, what is the appetite of your building owner, to determine whether you want to take that approach. Now the other approaches you can take is, well, I'm going to go for the $800 DR enablement money, $800 per kilowatt. In this situation, you're looking at not so much a long extended duration every day, Monday through Friday, but the ability to create extra flexibility to be on call with your battery that can respond to a 4-hour event window to create a reduction. So you're going to get the $800 per kW capped at either 50 to 65% depending on the size of the project. But on the other hand, you're going to get the demand response revenue by participating in the markets. And there's an option that outside of the summer, you could look at going back to doing potential peak demand management in the shoulder months. Demand charges aren't as high. But those are 2 primary strategies to look at right now in New York City. We can talk about that further, but I just want to put that on the table. And that's, the other thing to mention here is Department of Buildings. We're talking about barriers, and we had a great presentation a few weeks ago from Gina Barna from the Department of Buildings, and we have carrots, but then you also have sticks. On the stick side of the equation, we need to make sure that these batteries aren't causing safety issues. So there are a whole set of hurdles that you need to go through at the same time that you're going through your application process to make sure that that battery can actually be put in the building. So we want to make sure you have all these resources together to understand what you're in for in terms of doing battery projects in New York City. So with that put on the table, I'm going to go ahead and go to Mark Matthews. We have a prop here. I did ask Harris for an interesting thing about himself, but for Mark Matthews, I figured it out already. He has a real thing for questions. So if you have any questions for Mark, it's great. He's available. This is his brochure at the back of EaglePicher. Go ahead, Mark.
Oh yeah, sure. I figured I actually had a couple slides. You probably, since I have my picture everywhere, we're going to look at the slides that look at me after you're talking. So I'll flip through what we had. So I do have an interesting fact about myself, and I'll go through these slides really quickly, is that my first job, I'm a chemical engineer, and my first job out of school was EaglePicher designing thermal batteries. And I was gone 15 years, did a lot of other things. When I got hired back 6 months ago, I came in as a sales position, so that really spoke to my engineering qualities, that I came back as a salesperson versus an engineer. So I can tell you really impressed with my design capabilities. But I'm just going to give you literally 2 minutes on what EaglePicher is, what we do, and kind of how we're expanding into this market. So EaglePicher, we are a battery company that's been around for, our company's been in existence for 160 years. We've been making batteries for 80 years. And we make 30 different electrochemistries in 11 different plants in the US and Canada, and also in our joint venture in Germany. So we have a lot of experience, a lot of specialized markets, developing these highly reliable, high-performance chemistries. Particularly, we just passed in satellite 2 billion hours in 2 billion cell hours in space, and that kind of speaks to the kind of high-level battery chemistries that we worked on. Like I said, we have 11 plants. These chemistries we worked on, we thought were very interesting to get in the power pyramid, because as we looked at these different developments, we saw the value streams, how we could work the power pyramid to manage those. We'll talk about that in a second. We were acquired by the Group in 2010. Which was interesting is they divested from being a commodity-based business and have really put a lot of influx of capital into growing EaglePicher, our core business, and particularly the energy storage side that we'll talk about today. The power pyramid in itself is a patented design we have, and what it is as we looked at all these different chemistries we made, one of the things we wanted to do is how do we get that value stream. So we talk about demand response, talk about demand reduction, and then we can talk about just literally lowering a load for 4 hours every day. We find that the electrochemistries that we develop apply differently to those value streams, so we actually hybridize the system to allow us to specifically use different chemistries, different types of storage media to allow us to go after the power pyramid and get after these value streams, which are peak demand reduction, demand response, enrollment, energy arbitrage, energy smoothing, all those different things you look at from the standpoint of what energy storage can bring value in. We don't think there's one chemistry that fits that. We believe that there's a combination of chemistries that really make that happen. And ultimately, the biggest barrier to entering this market is capturing as many value streams in a single asset. So that's kind of been our approach as to how do we go about doing that and creating that capability. Right now, we're doing a project with Arista Power in Long Island City. That is basically one of our first installations in New York City that focuses on all the value streams we just talked about. We've done 7 or 8 other projects and have very different levels of chemistry we've done. We got contracts for doing sodium-based chemistries. We also have done lithium iron phosphate in combination with multiple lead acid systems in the projects that we have on the screen, and we're working on some more as we speak. But it kind of gives you, hopefully it gives you a feel for who we are as a developer in this space, and also as an integrator of the electrochemicals to really meet these applications. That's all.
So next I'm going to bring up Shellka Arora from Chadbourne and Parke to go over the finance side. There's plenty of interest on financing regarding the space, and Shellka's on the working group with us with the content storage team, and she's going to give some examples and knowledge that she's gotten from studying that space.
Thank you. Thanks. I don't have any slides, so if I put you to sleep, just raise your hand and shake you right there. In terms of interesting, to begin with myself, I'm Shellka Arora. I work with Chadbourne and Parke. Some of you may be familiar. It's a law firm based in New York, headquartered here, right here. With a particular focus on renewable energy. In terms of my involvement in the story, so I have been focusing on these sectors for the last 2 years. It goes a little beyond that. I don't know how many of you know the reality on the other side of the Atlantic. I grew in a country where you still have a lot of energy shortage, where you have basically nights without any electricity. And I remember, a battery inverter back in my house, where you're able to pour water right into the battery and make sure that the battery works and the inverter works for as long as you hope it will work. So that's my interest and fascination in the subject, just generally, and more so because of my practice, I focus on renewable energy, and wind and solar and storage, of course, go hand in hand. What I do for most parts, I'm a project finance attorney. I spend most of my time working on international projects, focusing on what really the lenders and the equity owners want in the project. Whether the returns make sense, whether the cash flows work, and that's where I come from, and I bring my experience to share with you. So I'm going to spend like a few minutes talking about where we are, what we have seen so far in terms of financing, what we see today, or the projects that are getting financed, the kind of financing models that you have out there, and in terms of where we want to go, and how we kind of bridge the gap from where we are to where we want to be. In terms of where we are and the financing that we have seen for the project so far, basically, we have seen a lot of DOE guarantee programs. You have seen a lot of demonstration programs, including under the DOE 1703 program. You have seen the ARPA financing program, right? Mostly for high impact, high potential technologies, emerging technologies. Why I still mention those programs and those projects? Because most of those projects have been employed for the last 5 years, and as the information, the data becomes relevant and comes out more and more from those projects, you are going to continue to see that performance is one of the key factors in bridging the gaps. So as information becomes available from some of the projects which are operational right now, that data would be helpful in bridging the gap to where we want to be. As of now, as of January 2014, there are about 180 DOE energy storage projects which are still operational. ARPA has funded over 300 projects in the sector. So that's some of the demonstration projects that you have seen out there. In terms of the other financing models that we are beginning to see, it's more driven by the market and what is happening on the policy and the regulatory side. So depending on the states which are taking the initiatives, including California, for example, you're beginning to see developers financing or coming up with models of various sorts of financing, including leasing programs. So for example, Step Inc. raised $5 million in financing from Fleet Fleet and is financing its customers where it makes sense on their operational budget and without really any upfront cost. You're beginning to see leasing models. Likewise, you have Solar Grid Storage, which is trying to raise $50 million for project financing funds, and again trying to come up with integrating solar and storage and providing financing to its customers for undertaking some of these storage projects. On the policy and the regulatory side, I think it's been a mixed bag. We haven't really seen any new firm orders, so we are all aware of Order 755, which does provides for pay for performance rule. One of the bad steps that happened was Order 745, which relates to demand performance, the demand response, and the payment for demand response, has been overturned by the Court of Appeals. So that is not such a positive step, but again, it does not undermine the fact that demand response still remains relevant today. In terms of other regulatory and what's really happening on the policy side, so one of the great things, or one of the most significant things that has happened very recently is the DOE loan guarantee program has come up with a new draft solicitation, which focuses on 5 areas including storage, and the program is up to $4 billion, and the final solicitation is supposed to come out by the end of June. So that definitely is a step forward, and it would remain, we would like to see what kind of projects get financed under the DOE loan guarantee program. The other thing that is the recent initiative I'm sure you're all aware of is the New York Green Bank program, right? It is a $1 billion effort. Right now there's about $285 million. But how much of it, what kind of storage technologies would really benefit from it would remain to be seen, because the bank really focuses or would work like a private sector bank. So you're not really going to see any emerging technologies per se being funded, because the bank is trying to keep the capital intact or work like a private sector bank, and the projects, there's a strict investment criteria that would need to be met. So that's kind of like the overall of where we are and where we are in terms of the projects that we are seeing getting financed, the programs that are out there, mostly demonstration projects, mostly grant funds out there, and not really so much of equity and debt. To move from where you are to where you want to be, you would want to kind of focus on two things, right? One is performance, and the second is on cost. And performance, the reason that I first mentioned the demonstration projects is you want to continue to focus on the information that comes out of the demonstration projects, whether or not the technologies which are still emerging, some of those which are still emerging, whether or not the technologies are going to perform as they promise to perform over a period of time. And cost is going to play a critical role in terms of, as the funds become available, as projects get scaled from lab to commercialization, as costs come down, you would see more and more financing. So I think it's really comes down to cost and to performance, moving from where we are to where we want to be. But generally speaking, or the overall picture still is, we are still in demonstration stage. We still don't have the kind of financing that we want to be out there, and we still have gaps to bridge.